everyone, Comic Reviewer here, this time reviewing on the Disney film Pocahontas. Now, as you know, Pocahontas is meant to be Disney's attempt in doing their own take on the real life events of Pocahontas, but making it their own personal take on it. And keep in mind the film was meant to be a musical, historical drama film, with some elements in that being altered from the real events of Pocahontas. For example, Pocahontas being an adult in the film, even though she was 10 or 11, and Ratcliffe being killed by Native Americans, even though in the Disney film, he did survive. So the premise of the film is meant to follow how in 1607, how John Smith and a group of settlers plan to head off to the New World, and we kind of see how Ratcliffe wants to do this as his one big effort to prove to King James and the people there back in London that he has what he has to be capable of. And it's kind of clear how Ratcliffe plans to seek out gold and to help bring back his status. So throughout the film, we do see how Pocahontas is met with John Smith, who after two and two learning more about themselves, we see how they realise they're not so different, and we kind of see how Ratcliffe is able to manipulate the other settlers into believing there's gold when there's not. And you can kind of tell Pocahontas' father does want to do the right things, but it kind of becomes clear that he's kind of left with no little options. And I think the film has a bit of a message that you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, and that you're just the same as the other person with likes, interests, and more learning about the cultures and roots. And I think the film really does handle it well, because you can kind of tell in Disney's version, John Smith does kind of see Pocahontas' world and gets amazed by it. And you can kind of tell Pocahontas is more amazed by what John Smith says about London and that, but you can kind of tell she knows her places with her own people. And I think for the most part the film really does try to show you how some of the characters see the effects of their actions. We do kind of see how Thomas kind of sees the harm when he ends up on the front lines, and we kind of see how he starts to kind of question his actions. We also do kind of see how Pocahontas' friend wants to try and do the right things and kind of realizes the harm of her actions. And I think the film really does handle that well. And I think for the most part I would say is that I wouldn't really call it the death of the Disney Renaissance era. I would say that it was just kind of the point in the 2000s that Disney were just kind of losing their magic, and it was just kind of clear the fandom were just expecting something bigger, more amazing, and something bigger after the Disney film Tarzan. Because sometimes when something reaches its peak, it tends to get old and stale and repetitive, much like what happened with the Arrowverse, and much like with Marvel now, due to retconning and changing so many things. I think I can understand, people criticizing the story, but it's meant to be Disney's version. It's meant to be their own original take on it. And I think for the most part I would say some of the characters do work. Like, you can kind of tell Ratcliffe is meant to be an antagonistic foil to John Smith, who believes himself that he's in the right and uses everything as an excuse to get what he wants. And I think when you've got Cocoam, who's meant to be a kind of stern but kind of brave Native American warrior, we kind of see how he wants to marry Pocahontas. Now, the difference between Cocoam and John Smith is John Smith was more willing to go into Pocahontas' world and see what she has to offer. The point of Cocoam, it's kind of implied after one of the battles with the Massawomics, it becomes clear he's just trying to get to a higher social position. And I think for the most part, I would say Pocahontas' story has a message about accepting others, coming into people's world, and seeing that there's more bigger things out there, and that you shouldn't really judge a book by its cover. So I think the film still deserves a thumbs up. Still good, and still alright. So, comic reviewer here, signing out.